When it comes to truth and reconciliation, the first reconciliation work had to be done within my own soul. My grandmother was a dorm parent at Norway House Residential School. This is not something that was told to me plainly. I had to put the pieces together and only really figured it out when I was in college for my Bachelor of Social Work degree. When I started putting the pieces together back in college, I was already completely captivated by the Indigenous culture around me. It truly felt as though I had fallen in love with someone madly and completely, found out about some horrible trauma and abuse in their past, and then realized that my own grandmother was the perpetrator of their abuse. This wasn't even the end of the story, though. I have aunts and uncles who fostered Indigenous children during the 60s. This is known here in Canada as the 60s scoop. In addition to all of these things, as I thought back to my grandmother's past, it got even worse because my grandfather and grandmother pitched in to purchase the land that was later used to become Camp Arnis. This is land that was called quote-unquote Crown land, which we now know means land stolen from the Indigenous people. As I reflected on everything I know about Camp Arnis, it was obvious to me that there must have been a community living in this location. There's a big freshwater lake, there are poplar groves, there's a big wide open field, and right near the waterfront was a building called the Wigwam. The wigwam was built as a chapel on this Bible camp. But where did they get the name wigwam from? What remnants of buildings were torn down on that property when they started building the camp? As I looked at the woods I used to wander through as a little girl, I touched a tree, and I could almost sense that that tree knew something that I don't. In addition to all this family history, I had to look my own reflection in the mirror and realize here I was, graduating with my Bachelor of Social Work degree, working in downtown Winnipeg as a child protection worker. In what ways was I unknowingly contributing to my own family lineage of devastation towards the Indigenous people? I'm sharing this to explain that ignorance and denial of your own family history will lead to history repeating itself. This is the point at which my immobilization began. For 10 years, I did nothing. I hung my head in shame. If I saw an Indigenous person, I looked at the ground, feeling completely unworthy of the space I was taking up on their land. And yet here I stood, third-generation Canadian, knowing that every footstep I was taking was whispering the word home, because this was also my home and native land. Where do I go? What do I say? I see Indigenous people crying out, "Give us our land back!" And in my heart I say, yes, where should I go? This same grandmother came to Canada at 8 years old as a refugee from Prussia. Her life was in danger and she was welcomed into this land. And in sweet loving ignorance, she wanted to repay the people that let her in this land by helping them learn English, by helping them to learn to read. The most devastating part of this whole thing is how she thought she was doing the right thing. And this is precisely why it immobilized me, because I didn't know if I was also doing the right thing by being a social worker. When I started having kids, I quit my job as a social worker and I haven't gone back, because truth be told, I still don't know if social work is the next thing contributing to the management and destruction of a culture. But I did eventually find my way forward one step at a time by being an ally to the Indigenous community. In my next video, I'll explain how my healing journey continued.